Congressman, you just outlined a set of principles with the House Freedom Caucus. What can you tell us about those principles?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that we can do is look at what's possible. And when you look at what we have to do, we have to get a way to fund our government in the year ahead. We've promised people we're going to get tax reform done, so we have to get that done. And what Jim Jordan's laid out is a path that shows that there's some flexibility here on the budget. There's not a consensus yet, but we're looking for a way to do it. And I think the most important paradigm there is to get the debate away from defense discretionary and non-defense discretionary and on to discretionary versus mandatory spending. And in a context where the president has said, I don't really want to deal with mandatory spending directly this year, some of the means-tested programs, dealing with those and the budgetary implications of saying, hey, we're going to fund things for people that are able-bodied adults start to work and they're not incentivized to stay out of the labor market. And why that's important is because of the policy debate we're talking about there. But when you go out and talk to people in our district and really all across the country, the labor market isn't keeping pace, even with a 1.5% growth rate. And so we're crowding out some of the labor participation. We have to get able-bodied adults engaged in the workforce because there are open jobs. And in our district, people are saying, hey, we would hire, and the next round of investment won't come to our district because we don't have the labor force to fill the last round of investment. So we have to solve that problem.
So that means addressing welfare, addressing food stamps, potentially, as a result of the border adjustment tax, which has divided the Republican caucus. It sounds like you're against the border tax. Are you?
No, personally, I'm for the blueprint that Chairman Brady laid out, the Ways and Means. I support the blueprint. The thing that I haven't heard yet is a transition plan. So I'm open to saying, hey, if you've got this transition plan that's going to build consensus and be viable, then that's a good thing. And you'll see some of the debate in Freedom Caucus, for example. We're divided on that. If you look, conservatives are divided. Rand Paul and Ted Cruz had fundamentally the chairman's blueprint as their presidential platform tax policy. So conservatives aren't monolithically against a border tax, but how do you pull it off? There's not yet been a path to say that we can implement it. And the concern is, as you talk to colleagues across the conference, is I'm not sure that we can actually get there currently. And so at the end of the day, even if everyone absolutely is divided, how are you going to implement it? Even if I love it, I'm not sure that politically we can accomplish it. So setting aside border adjustability, how do you raise the money? Even if you kept border adjustability, right, doing the linkage with driving growth in the labor market is an important thing to do, whether you go with border adjustability or not.
Revenue neutrality, how important is that?
I think when you look at revenue neutrality, you look at it in a context of we're collecting about 17–18% of our GDP in revenue. We can shift how we do that, but what you've seen over time is somewhere in that 15 to 20% range is what's possible. And when you get the higher level, it's not because you drove higher taxes, it's because you drove higher growth rates and you get better collection.
Last question for you. All of this yesterday, the testimony with former FBI Director James Comey testifying, created a lot of noise here in Washington, to say the least, and all throughout the country. Is that storyline, is the Russia probe, is it impeding your ability, Congress's ability, the Republicans' ability to pass through a policy, an agenda?
Well, no. I mean, yesterday, if you look at what we accomplished, we did a real meaningful reform to Dodd-Frank. The Choice Act passed. I think that's one of the biggest drains on the economy in a regulatory environment. It's been massive. It was targeted at the biggest banks in the marketing. It missed the mark. Even Barney Frank says it missed the mark. It's had a crippling effect on small and community banks. More than 1,900 gone since Dodd-Frank passed. And how's that impacting it? For average consumers like I was, I've only been in Congress a year today. I was a business guy. We were getting hamstrung by Dodd-Frank and the regulatory framework, the way that it told banks to not hold risk on their balance sheets, which is the exact opposite of what you want. These small and community banks holding risk on their balance sheets, these aren't the same things that led to the recession. Even some of the Democrats acknowledge this. And so there are other reforms that made it more partisan on the vote, but we accomplished it. Now we got to get action in the Senate. So it may be delaying the Senate. I'm not sure what the holdup is in the Senate, but we've made a lot of progress in the House. And frankly, we've made more progress than has been attributed on changing laws. We've passed a lot of laws this year.
Congressman, thank you for coming on Bloomberg. We appreciate
Thanks.
it. Thank you. I appreciate that.